Hey, what's up? My name's Samuel Leeds. I'm a property investor and I've been investing in property successfully, but I've also made many mistakes over the last 12 years. And in this video, I'm going to be answering your property investment questions. Anything niggly you've got around tax, mortgages, rent to rent, buy to lets, anything at all. Comment your questions below and I'm going to be answering your questions next week. However, right now, I'm going to be answering the questions from the previous week. Please, if you enjoy my videos, please do smash the like button. That really means the world to me. Also, if you're not already subscribed, subscribe and turn the notification bell on. Now, while I'm answering the questions from last week, if you have a question that pops into your mind, write it, comment it, because I can only do these videos if you actually do put your questions below. So comment like crazy, let me know your niggling questions, because I really believe that the only reason you're not where you want to be in property is because you're stuck because you don't know the answer to something. And that's why every single week on a Sunday evening at 7, I make myself available to answer your property investment questions. So last week, we had some really interesting questions, and I'm gonna get these up right now. So George C said, let's say I had £250,000. Would it be better for me to invest into 2 cheaper houses or 1 more expensive house? I would want the house or houses to go up in value, and which one do you think I could get the most rent from? So George, my advice would probably to split this into 2 houses or buy as many houses as you can. And the reason is because if you've got £250,000, the average house for £250,000 is going to give you a rent of probably around about £1,200. But a house for 125 grand, the rent is only going to be a little bit less, maybe £900. So you're going to get a much higher return on investment if you leverage your money and buy as many properties as you can. However, if you've got 250 grand, I mean, potentially you could buy a lot more than 2 houses if you're going to use the bank's money and take on mortgages. So my advice would be to always look to maximize your money. Every time you invest £1, you want to be getting as much as possible back. So I wouldn't go and just dump that into 1 house, 100% would not. Burning Desire says, if I bought a house for £75,000, but others now tell me I should have got it for £50,000, and I did spend £2,500 on a refurb, is this loss a biggie? Since I watch a lot of your videos, my mindset tells me as long as it's making me money and I keep it in the long term, it's fine. Okay, so the reason I said oh geez is because you watch a lot of my videos and you're asking me if it's a biggie or not when you bought a house for 75 grand that you could have bought for 50. And I would say yes, I would say that is a biggie. Because, I mean, listen, there's no point getting upset over spilt milk. So if you've already bought it and it is making you decent money, it's giving you a good return on investment, then fine. But I would definitely learn from it, because if you could have bought it for 50, firstly, I'd make sure that that is the case. It's not just Dave down the pub saying that. When you buy a house, you want to buy it as cheap as possible. And the thing is, which is really what I find really interesting. Sometimes when people are buying houses, they just think, oh, it's like paper money. 100 grand, 110, 105, it doesn't really matter. But the difference between 100 and 105, that's 5 grand. Imagine if you went to an ATM machine and took out 5 grand in hard cash, but then accidentally left it and left it. You'd be absolutely devastated, because that's 5 grand. And in the same way, when you're buying a house, if you knock 5 grand off the price, it's not really any different. It's still money. It's still 5 grand. And the reason I like property so much is because you can knock property prices down. It's negotiable. So if you're buying gold or Bitcoin or stocks, you can't negotiate the price. Property is one of the very few assets where you can actually choose between you and the seller what price you pay it for. And that's why it's so cool, because you can just find motivated sellers. So when you're buying a property, always ask them to name the figure first, and always say, if I was to buy it cash tomorrow, what's the lowest you could accept and still live with? And then wait to hear their figure, and then even try and get them a little bit lower than that. So it's really important to buy as cheap as you possibly can. I hope that helps. Thanks for watching my videos. And hey guys, if you're enjoying it, smash the like button. I really, really appreciate it. Alex Ives, not a question, but one of your lampshades is very slightly wonky, man. We've actually moved rooms. So just for you actually, Alex, we've moved, because of the wonky lampshade, I've moved into a whole new room. I hope you like the setting, by the way. Let me know in the comments if you like this setting. It's very green and leafy, so let me know if you enjoy it. I'll probably be back in the usual wonky pictured room at some point though, very, very soon. Vicky Ferrara says, I'm a 65-year-old woman and just bought my first home in the UK. It's a 3-bed terraced house, but instead of living in it, I decided to rent it out. Good for you. I paid cash, £140,000, but now want to more with 100% equity I have in it. Do I just go to a bank and get a mortgage on it? Is that what you mean about refinancing? I won't get any pension here, so need to start making some serious money and decisions in property. I also don't know what the term rent to rent means. Is that what I'd call subletting? Have recently subscribed and watched all your videos. Never too late, Kiwi girl. Vicky, firstly, I just want to say I'm very, very honoured that you're watching all the way over from New Zealand, and it's great to have you on YouTube. So there's quite a few questions in there. So the first thing is, you bought it cash. Yeah. If you refinance it, the definition of refinancing it is getting a mortgage on that, which you could do. So you could take a mortgage on the property that you own outright in cash, and then when you get that mortgage, you can then invest it heavily into property. You asked about rent to rent. Is that what I call subletting? So subletting is actually illegal because subletting is when you rent a property and you have like an AST contract, you become a tenant, but then you put other tenants in the property. So it's like you're a tenant, but then you're putting tenants in. Normally you're doing that without proper consent from the landlord. So that's subletting. Rent to rent is when you do it legally and use a management agreement. So you never become a tenant yourself. You take on a management agreement on a property and then you put tenants in it. So you can still make a lot of profit doing this, but it is not illegal like subletting is. I hope that helps and good luck in your property journey. If you have a follow-up question, by the way, Vicky, comment, and next week I'll do my best to answer as well. Paulina. Hi Samuel, we live in a property with the right to buy. If we buy it, we cannot sell it for the next 10 years, but we can rent it out. We'll get a substantial discount to purchase it. I'm thinking to buy the property because it's heavily discounted, the mortgage will be low, and rent it out. With the profit between rent and mortgage, I will buy a second property to live in, so after all, I will have 2 properties. How would you go about it? Would you go for a standard mortgage? Would I be able to get 2 mortgages? Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge. So Paulina, first thing I want to say is massive congratulations. It sounds like you've got a really good plan. In fact, one of my very first student was called JL. Her name was JL Spooner. She came to the crash course in 2014. Can you believe it? And she was living in a council flat. She was a tenant. And because she'd lived there a long time, she also, like you, she had the right to buy it. And she did exactly what you're talking about. She bought the property at a discount, and then she rented it out. And she's gone on to buy more property. So what you're wanting to do is absolutely 100% doable. In fact, JL Spooner's interview, I'll leave a card or I'll put a link in the description or both so you can watch her interview. So what you want to do is absolutely doable. In terms of mortgageability, if you're buying a property to rent out, you're going to want to get a buy-to-let mortgage. If you're buying it to live in it, you're going to get a residential mortgage. And of course, you can have 2 mortgages. You can even have 2 residential mortgages usually. A lot of lenders will let you do that if you've had a change of circumstances. So you're on the right track. Keep me posted how you're getting on, and good luck. iFuss. Hi Samuel, how do you know if an estate agent is legitimate? Is there any government protection from fraudulent estate agents? So there's government protection against fraudulent anything. You can't be fraudulent and continue being in business. You'll be closed down, you'll be arrested, the courts will sort you out, and if you're fraudulent, the police will sort you out. So I think maybe you don't mean fraudulent, maybe you just mean a little bit shady. So in terms of estate agents, how do you know if they're legitimate, you asked? Most estate agents will be registered with an ombudsman. So I would, if you're worried about an estate agent, I mean, to be honest, usually when you're doing business with an estate agent, they're passing you a property, but they're not charging you a fee. So I don't quite know what your concern is. I mean, how is an estate agent going to screw you over? That's the first thing. Whenever you're doing business with someone, you need to always say, what's the best case? What's the likely case? What's the worst case? Now, if the worst case is you're about to invest your life savings with this business or with this person, and if it goes wrong, you're going to be financially crippled, then sure, you've got to really do your due diligence. You've got to figure out if they are legitimate and you know, maybe check that they're with the property ombudsman in case of an estate agent. Look at reviews and et cetera, et cetera. But with an estate agent, because you're not actually usually giving them any money, they're selling you a house and they're charging the seller. I can't really see that they would screw you over apart from waste some time. So I'd probably just get that fear out of your head a little bit, personally, but for sure, do research, Google them, check they're with a property ombudsman. Hope that helps. Okay, Jithin says, will you ever buy a home to live in for the rest of your life? I'm sure at some point, me and my family will buy a home to live in. The thing is, it doesn't make financial sense. If I bought the house that I live in, there'd be so much cash tied up, giving me no return on investment at all. It would pain me so badly. The only way I'd buy a house to live in would be if I just said, you know what, this is not a commercial decision. I love the house. I want to be here forever. You know, we've finished having all the kids we want to have, and it's in the perfect location, and we just don't want any risk of being evicted as tenants. Maybe then we would buy, not in any rush to buy, quite happy renting, just because it doesn't make commercial sense to do that. Hope that helps. Hella Flush. Samuel, the part where you talked about your car, did you buy it outright to get that tax year's expense up to 126 instead of deducting it over 5 years or so? Unfortunately, Hella Flush, I don't think I actually get any tax deductions really on my car. I really should have bought a Tesla, because Teslas you can run completely through the business. My car is a Range Rover. I did buy it, although I didn't buy it outright for cash. Same reason why, because if I'd have put 126,000 pounds and just put it into a car, again, it's that money's locked up. So my wife, who's actually behind the camera on this occasion, she deals with all the personal finances, with the rent, the car, and all that stuff. I deal with the business finances. So no, I don't think, unless you can enlighten me, if I can claim back more than I thought with my Range Rover, then let me know. I'd love to be able to do that. And then previously, before I bought my car, I actually have leased all my cars, and my wife leases her car. And again, it usually makes financial sense to do this. And there are certain cars as well where you can lease them and you can put them through the company. So same way as would I ever buy a house to live in, similar kind of question. If I bought a house to live in, I would do it knowing that it's not the best commercial decision, but I just want to. And that's kind of what I did with my car. I drive my car, and I bought my car because I really, really like it. I know it's not the best financial thing. I know I can't claim it all back on the business. I know it doesn't make sense, but I just really like it. So it's kind of a luxury. But I bought it knowing that, okay, this doesn't make commercial sense to do this. This is not an investment. It's a complete liability, but I just want to do it. So I think the trick is not to try and trick yourself, and people try and justify bad financial decisions and try and pretend it's an investment or pretend it's like, really? Or do you just want to do it? So if you're going to buy a liability, at least just accept that it's a bad investment, but you're doing it purely because you want to. I think that's probably my general thoughts. I hope that helps. What we got next? Zaid. Let's say you are following the BRRR strategy and take out a bridging loan to cover 80% of the cost to buy a £100,000 property. On top of the £20,000 down payment, you will also need funding to refurbish the property before refinancing. Where does this money come from? Can you somehow use the bridging loan for this? Thanks in advance. Zaid, yes, you can. There are a lot of bridging companies that will also give you development finance, so they'll lend you to actually do the property up, which is really, really cool. Prue says, I have found a 7-bed HMO for £145,000 at 27% return on investment. If it's a good deal, how would I pass it on to an investor? Because I'm only 15. Oh my goodness. Well, the fact that you're 15 is just really, really cool. I started out in property when I was 17, so not massively different in age. So listen, if you're finding good deals and you're 15 years old, firstly, I just want to say awesome. You're probably going to struggle to set up a company and to start selling your deals to investors because you're a little bit young. So my advice to you though, I'm not the kind of guy that will just say you're too young though. And I even get criticized. People say, Samuel, why are you giving 15 and 16-year-old kids advice about property? They should just be focusing on their studies. I'm like, listen, I run a YouTube channel and I teach property. And I'm going to teach anyone that asks me. I'm not going to say you're too young, you're too old, you're too poor, you're too rich. I don't discriminate against anybody. I'm not going to say you're too stupid either. You'll never succeed. That would be completely wrong. When I started out in property, I was 17. I didn't have pretty much any education behind me. I failed really in school, had a few GCSEs. People could have easily said, you're too young and written me off, but in the same way, no, people didn't do that to me. I had a lot of people that believed in me and supported me, so that's what I want to do to other people. So listen, 15, respect. My advice to you would be to co-deal source, okay? Find a deal sourcing company and say to them, look, you're selling deals to investors. Can I bring you deals? And if they're good, you can sell my deals and I want a kickback referral fee. That would be my advice to you. But just congratulations for even watching these videos. Really, really cool. Tyrone Saxton. The government are printing and paying out all this money, e.g. through furlough, giving out loans and grants. How on earth do you think the government are planning to recoup all this money back? Do you think they will raise taxes next year? I want to hear your prediction. Tyrone, I don't think they're going to raise taxes, no. I mean, they might raise taxes a little bit, but I don't think that's how they're going to get this money back. I mean, as you rightly said, they're printing out money. So it's hardly really that generous. It's like, if I gave you money, if I was like, hey, here's £1,000, you'd say, oh, thank you so much. But if I had the ability to print money, and I just printed £1,000 and then gave it to you, you might not be quite so grateful. So whilst I'm not saying we shouldn't be grateful for the government support, my slightly cynical brain, and I don't mean to turn this into a conspiracy show or anything like that, but I think that the reason the government are giving out furlough and giving out so much bounce back loans is partly because they want to help the economy, yes, but I also think the government very much like people to rely on them. So what's going to happen is everyone's going to become really dependent on the government because they're going to owe the government all this money. And when people, that's the same reason as why a country will lend another country money. It's not because they're trying to help the country out. They'll go, oh, you really need money? You really need money? Oh, here's some money. And they'll lend them, a few billion. And the country will be like, great. And then they'll swallow it up into a black hole. And it's the same as a lot of these bounce back loans and furlough and stuff. And I mean, furlough, to be fair, we don't have to pay back. But bounce back loans, we do. So all that's going to happen is most people that get bounce back loans will just end up just spending it and it will disappear and it will go down the black hole, which is kind of not the fault, but a result of the restrictions that the government put in place in the first place. So the government say, you can't do business, you can't trade, you have to close down, you can't open shops, you have to social distance, you can't run events, you can't do this, you can't do that. And everyone's like, well, man, strangled financially. And they go, but don't worry, you can have a bounce back loan. Here you go, but you have to pay me back. So in the same way that when a country gives another country money, that country now becomes a slave really to that country. So this country can call the loan back in, has power over it. And the government, I've always said this, that what the government want is they want complete control over you and I. And what I teach financial independence. And I think it's a real shame. I think the rich are going to get richer, the poor are going to get poorer. And I know it's bad news. And the way to fight against this is to become financially literate and also to become financially independent so that you don't have to rely on the government. But yeah, I think it's going to get really, really rough. Dolly says, I am from Israel and I want to invest in London soon. I wanted to ask, I am going to buy a house in London and rent it out as a HMO. I wanted to ask if I will always have tenants, if it is a good area, and if HMO works all year. Another question, is there any months that are less successful and then my annual average income goes down? So basically, Dolly, no. I mean, with HMO property, especially in London, you're probably going to find it's full all year round. If it's a professional HMO property, there's no particular peak or, I mean, I've found that it's pretty steady. So serviced accommodation is very different. Serviced accommodation, you're going to have quiet months, you're going to have busy months. With HMOs, no. And you're going to find they rent very well as well in London. Now, London is expensive. I assume you know how much it is to buy in London, but the rents are also expensive. You're not going to get the best return on investment in London, but yeah, you're going to have no problem renting out HMOs in London, generally speaking. Make sure you speak to a HMO management company before you buy, and you've got that in place as well. So good luck, and if there's any way I can be of any further help, let me know. Okay, Sigran, how do you raise finance and find joint ventures partners for development? Great question. So how do you find joint ventures for development and raise finance for development? So the development has to be good. You can be the best person at raising finance, but if you've got a really crappy deal and there's not much profit to be made in there, you're probably going to struggle to get an investor to come in with you, because what investors look for is they're looking to make money. So they want to come in, they want it to be all easy. Usually they want it to be all systemized. They want to put their money into something that's going to make money, where the research has been done, the gross development value is done, there's not that much risk. So the first thing is to have really good deals. The second thing is to tell people about your deal. You've got to make it known. Put yourself out there. And the third thing is to know how to ask for money, to be able to understand the right language to use. So there's quite a lot to it, but I think the very first thing is get good deals. That'd be my biggest advice. James Watson. Samuel, when refinancing, do you go back to the original mortgage provider for the revaluation or go to a new provider? As obviously there is ERC to consider, and that has an impact on both your ROI and yield. So you're going to have to pay ERC early repayment charge. If you're going to get charged by your mortgage lender because you're trying to refinance too soon, you're going to get charged whether you refinance with anybody else or whether you try and refinance with them. It's a fixed term, so it might be worth speaking to them for sure. I would always, when I'm refinancing though, I don't go to one lender. I just speak to an independent broker and let them look across the board. So I think that's probably the best thing to do, because they've got access to all the different lenders and they'll be able to give you the best rate. So hope that helps. Steve Brandon. Hi Samuel, how do I release equity from a similar question from a mortgage I've had for only a month? All right, so okay, if you've only had the mortgage for a month, chances are you're probably going to be fixed. Normally when you take out a mortgage, they'll fix it for a certain amount of time. It might be 6 months, it might be 2 years. And if you try and refinance and pull equity out before you've let that end, you're going to be charged a fee. Now you might just want to swallow the fee and say, you know what, I've got a lot of equity in this. All right, there's £2,000 fee, which is early repayment charge, whatever. I'll take that because I know that when I get this money from this equity, I'm going to be able to invest it and make a load of money. Another option would be if you've got a mortgage, a small mortgage, and you've got equity in the property, you could potentially look at getting another lender that's going to come on and give you a second charge. So a mortgage will always want a first charge on your property. So let's say you own a property and it's worth £200,000 and you've got a mortgage for £100,000 on it and you've got £100,000 equity. You're never going to be able to get any lender that's going to give you £100,000, because that would mean that you're not leaving any money in the deal yourself at all. So normally 75% loan to value is about normal. So £200,000 house, you might be able to get £150,000 equity. I hope this is making sense and you're following. If not, rewind, watch again, or comment and ask more questions. So a mortgage lender will always want a first charge. So if they've got £100,000 that they've given you, you've got a mortgage of £100,000, the property is £200,000. If you can't refinance because you've got a fixed mortgage length, then what you could do is you could just say, well, actually, I'm going to get a second lender to come and give me £50,000, and they'll have a second charge on the property. So that's another option that you can do. I don't want to get too technical on this because I'm not a mortgage advisor, but I can only speak from experience, and this is something that I've done many, many, many times. Okay, Naomi says, hey, hope you're well. Love your videos. Thank you so much. Would you start a rent-to-rent through a limited company or sole trader? I have a 9-to-5. If some trader, when would you make the switch? So I would start with a limited company, Naomi, and the reason is it's going to protect you, because if you've got a limited company, then the company is going to ring fence you, the individual. So should something go wrong, let's say you've got a rent-to-rent business and someone slips in the property or anything happens, then they're not going to sue you personally, they're going to sue the company, which gives you some sort of protection. Also, there's a lot of tax advantages to running any business through a limited company. So I would always recommend doing it through a limited company. Hope that helps. Michael Bennett. I'm the future. Could you make... You're the future? Hi, mate. I think that maybe that should say in the future. In the future, could you maybe do some videos investing in property abroad? For example, France, Spain, Italy, etc. It will be interesting to see if the same principles can work for holiday homes. Michael, you're in luck actually, because just on Wednesday, I did a whole interview with a guy who came on my crash course. He came on the Property Investors Crash Course. He bought 5 houses in Stoke-on-Trent, and then he thought, maybe I could do this in Italy. And he went on to do the same thing in Italy and bought another 5 houses in Italy, and he says that he's making better returns in Italy than he is in Stoke-on-Trent, using the exact same formula that he learned from me. So it's very, very, very similar. I recommend you check that interview out. I'll leave a little card, and I'll also leave it in the description for you to watch. So hope that helps, and good luck on all your investments. Okay, user says, I have £3,000 saved. What would be the best thing to go far in property to start? I'm 18. Okay, so if you're 18, you've got £3,000. I mean, listen, you can't do a lot with £3,000, but you can start with nothing. So it all depends how creative you are. You could potentially get a rent to rent with as little as £3,000. I would be inclined to put at least some of that towards your education, because if you've only got £3,000, you're not going to be able to go and buy a property. Normally speaking, you're going to need to be very, very creative. So you need to learn and become knowledgeable on how to be creative. So I definitely put some towards education and map out a business plan of exactly what you want to do. Surrender. Hi Samuel, love your videos. When buying a property via bridging loan, I understand it's a cash payment. However, to an estate agent, is it still considered borrowing against the property or considered a cash purchase? So if I'm buying a property and I'm going to be using bridging finance, I'll tell the estate agent that it's just a cash buy because it's not a mortgage. I guess everything in one sense is a cash buy, because even if you get a mortgage, you're still buying it cash, but you're just getting the cash from the mortgage. So it's kind of a little bit, normally I'll tell you something, the real reason an estate agent wants to know if you're buying cash or mortgage is because if you're buying mortgage, they want to sell you their mortgage products. Whereas if you're buying cash and you're using bridging, it's effectively the same as just buying it cash. So because a short-term loan, you get it, you buy the property, and then you'll refinance down the line usually. So I'd just say cash. Hope that helps. All right, last one, Jacob Clare. Hi Samuel, my question is that I'm planning to go to university and go into property. What university courses would you recommend? I understand that I don't need to go, but it's a personal preference. Listen, don't go to university because you want to go to university, okay? Don't go to university because you think it's nice, because your parents want you to, because you think, oh, I may as well, everybody else is, it'll be fun, I'll learn a thing or two. It's a bad way to learn about life skills. Only go to university if, and this is just my opinion, if it fits with your long-term plan. So if you're saying, Samuel, I want to go into property long term, my goal is to be a property investor and to be making loads of money as a real estate king. All right, fine. Don't go to university then, because even if you go on a real estate course, yeah, you'll get a certificate at the end of the course, an accreditation and all that, and a hat and a little scroll. But guess what? That ain't going to help you. It's not going to help you in any way, apart from you be able to say, oh, look, I've got a degree. It doesn't help. So, I mean, geez, only go to university if your plan long-term, if you want to be a doctor, that's your end goal, and you say, okay, how am I going to get there? Oh, well, I need to go to uni as part of the plan. Then fine, if it fits. But don't go to university if it doesn't fit with your long-term plan. That's my advice. I never went to university. So if you want to learn about property, it's much better to either get a job in property or go on some training, even if it's free. And I'm not trying to just sell my courses here, but like my cousin Max was about to go to university to study real estate and property. I told him, you're a dummy, don't do it. What's your purpose? Oh, I want to learn about property. I was like, mate, he ended up coming doing some training with me and getting a job with me in property. And within about 3 or 4 months, he knew more than all his other friends, because this was years ago now, that have now graduated from uni about property. It's just, and the guys that teach you at university, okay, the lecturers, if they're teaching business or if they're teaching property, most of them aren't making good money in property anyway. So you need to learn from people that you actually want to be like. So that's my advice. I'm only speaking from experience. I'd love to know your thoughts though, folks. So comment your thoughts below. Comment your questions below. And again, if you enjoy my video, please do smash the like button. You've got to subscribe as well, because if you don't subscribe, you won't even be notified next week when I answer your questions. So comment below, subscribe, turn the notification bell on, and I'll see you next time.